Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin Tracy,
I'm Samantha Tomlinson.
and joining us this time for our very special episode that I've been looking forward to for months is our good friend, Aaron Silva.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Aaron was with us for Space Jam, and I remember when we first started this, I had said to Kevin, I had literally said to you, we should bring on Aaron, and I said, what movie? Before Space Jam, I said, what movie? And you were like, oh, you knew exactly what movie you wanted to bring him on.
I knew exactly what movie. I had originally planned for all of us to get together in March and watch all three Starship Troopers movies and just kind of do a mix mash review of the whole trilogy. But because of COVID, those plans eventually fell through. So we're just going to stick with the first movie review, which is still really fun. I still very much enjoy this movie, and I cannot wait to hear your guys' opinions on this, because I know you haven't seen this before, Sam, and I know you've only seen this once before, Aaron.
How many times have you seen this?
Multiple times.
Oh boy.
Is this like Godzilla?
Oh boy, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah,
Let's just jump right into it, shall we?
This is the only one that got released in theaters, right? All the rest were direct to DVD.
The Starship Troopers movies, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe this one and one of the animated movies had a limited theatrical release, but yeah, this is the main one that had theatrical release. The other live action ones were straight to DVD, and for good reason, but we'll get to that later.
I mean, that's based on this cast. You got Denise Richards, Neil Patrick Harris, Clancy
Casper
Brown,
Van Dien.
That's all I know.
God, Neil is such a baby in this movie. I love it. He's so small.
Everyone else, I was just like, oh yeah, I've seen this person on this or this, bit parts on TV or whatever.
Yeah.
But most of them I didn't really know. Oh, the white, obvious major white friend. That's Jake Busey. That's Gary Busey's son. He was in, more recently, he was in season 3 of Stranger Things. And I remember thinking, this is a horrifying man. What is up with this guy? And we all learned
Wait.
Gary Busey's
what was
son.
his name? The redheaded friend of Rico is in Stranger Things?
No, the white guy, the super blonde, triangle creepy smile.
The guy who gets his hand stabbed by Clancy Brown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't remember him in Stranger Things, but then again, it's been forever
since
I've seen
season
that.
3. He was one of the asshole reporters at the paper that Nancy.
Okay. He totally is. Yeah, he's the major antagonistic reporter who Nancy. No spoilers, but. It doesn't end well for him.
He's a dick. He's a dick.
That came out. Season 3 of that show came out almost 2 years ago. You're fine.
No, it came out 2 years? Oh my god! Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was. Wait, I thought it was.
Yeah,
no, it was last year. I thought it was a year ago.
Oh, okay.
I'm 2 years. I'm wow.
It feels like 2 years.
No,
this year definitely feels like multiple years have gone by.
Yeah. So kind of jumping into this, Starship Troopers is based off of a old 1951 novel based on the same title, and it's kind of funny because this movie, directed by Paul Verhoeven, who is probably more famously known for directing RoboCop, kind of made this movie a bit more of a satire than the original source material, because the original source material had a little bit more, I guess I want to say nuances, because it came out during the time of the Cold War, so it didn't really glorify war as much as it did in this movie.
Holy shit, yeah.
Yeah, from what I can understand, it was mainly it was an almost philosophical text in debating the pros and cons of this specific society that he outlines. And in the movie, they definitely take a much more satirical approach to his ideas.
So it's a book?
Yeah, this is originally a book.
So Aaron, have you read it?
No, I have not read it. I've read about it, but I haven't read it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is. I read a bit of it a long time ago, but the main storyline is very similar to this, but it kind of reads a bit more of like a first person narrative memoir of from the perspective of Johnny Rico, who's the main character from the movie as well. His kind of journey throughout the Bug War, kind of flashing back to how he like originally kind of joined up because the bugs in the book as well also wiped out Buenos Aires, and that's as far as similarities between the book and the movie go, that's more or less all the similarities. There's like a couple like the same characters, but this one, the book kind of goes a bit more into like philosophical debates between Johnny Rico and like his commanding officers over a lot of widespread topics, going from voter rights to capital punishment to patriotism. And this one just has a very much tongue-in-cheek look on, hey, this is what it would look like if the world was run by a fascist organization.
Okay, this. So I have not. I obviously knew the name Starship Troopers because you bring it up every once in a while.
Yes, for good reason.
I've not obviously read the book. My only knowledge of it prior to you bringing it up was I had seen the Star Kid parody musical of it, which I will say it is significantly better than the movie, but also I thought it was way more fun and it's hilarious.
How dare you?
But also, I will say watching the movie now, I'm like, oh, this person's supposed to be that person. Like, there's not like there's no Rico. There's no straight like, oh, that character is from the movie. It's just like there are certain characters that are inspired by characters in the movie. So it kind of cleared that up. But I mean, it wasn't it wasn't like there's a character who's from like a farm planet and it's called Farm Planet. Like they're just
yes.
like
Farm Planet.
like when they make fun of, there's that one guy they make fun of like, oh, what are you like on Farm Planet? Like and that's obviously not what he's from, but they're just like making fun. So, but like it's making fun of the movie. But I
mean, in the third Starship Troopers, they do kind of make fun of like some of the locals, because on one of the planets they're fighting on is literally just a farming planet, and all the locals there is like, yo, you fucking soldiers bringing your war here. It's like, we didn't bring it here. We're just fighting.
Yeah, this movie, I will say I did watch it. I started it like a week ago, and then I went out of town. But what I have noticed is that when I would be watching, I'd be kind of into it, and then I'd pause it for some reason, and I would not really want to go back. It wasn't as engaging as I was hoping. Here's the thing, Kevin. We talked Godzilla, and you have a very intense love-hate relationship with that movie.
Yeah,
and honestly, I thought that movie was way more fun than this one.
Well, Starship Troopers is not a super fun movie, although it's funny because like I feel like it was advertised as like a super fun like Star Wars knockoff type movie, but honestly,
what is Star Trek?
I found
honestly.
I found it interesting, but not particularly fun.
No, I agree.
I'm kind of on the opposite boat of you guys. I find this movie very entertaining. It's just, I will admit the first act is kind of a chore to get through because it's very much a teen love triangle drama of like, oh, I'm gonna join because Carmen's joining, but Xander is trying to hook up with my girlfriend. Oh, that dick. It's very much a chore to get through, but at the same time, after you kind of get that initial setup and them all joining in the second act and their relationship still kind of like showing up, you do kind of get invested and you root for them, and it is like it's very entertaining to watch, especially when they do eventually start fighting in the bug war against the arachnids. And also, the arachnids just look fucking awesome.
They look so good for the year. Every time I was watching it, I remember I was watching the bit towards the end where the brain bug gets its little thing sliced off. And it rears back and it slams into the ground, and you can see like the like dust from the ground popping up, and the Foley track is really good, and it really feels like this heavy weight, like it's really there and heavy and in that space. And that's like really good when you look at other like CGI at the time. They clearly put a lot of effort into making the bugs feel real and feel there, even if the actors don't always know where the bug's supposed to be.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually did a fair amount of research for this episode on this movie. It turns out that ILM did the special effects for this movie.
Oh, well, there you go.
They spent over a year modeling the ships, the buildings, and all the bug effects around all the actual physical models for the bugs, because there were several times where there is an actual bug model like swing like the troopers around, and the transition between CGI and like live action, it's like a quick like in the first invasion of Clendatha, when you see like the reporter getting swung around by the bug, it first shows up as a CG bug, then the camera like quickly pans away because like the cameraman is like, he's like trying to run away, and then it jump cuts to, or then it quickly pans back to the reporter being lifted in the air by an actual real bug. And that transition is so seamless that you almost don't notice it. And there's several moments like that throughout the movie.
Yeah, I didn't notice that at all.
It was really cool how they were able to do like really quick like transitions and like very seamless cuts from between CGI and live action, because the bug models look fantastic. I love the design of the arachnids in this. It's wildly creative, and we haven't really seen anything like this before.
No, it's really cool. I love their design. I think that they obviously put a ton of effort into the CGI for the bugs, because they knew that it was important that the bugs be scary and be a threat in the movie. Like, they have to look good for the movie to succeed, and they did that very well. Yeah. It's all the CGI when it's not the bugs that I feel like it sort of fails a little bit, like the little the little jump at the beginning of the movie when he's like jumping over the guy trying to tackle him, and he does a flip in the air,
sports ball thing.
and the flip is just way too fast for a normal person to flip, which is why it's easy to tell that it's not real. But I'm like, why didn't you just wire him for that? It would have been a lot easier and looked more realistic.
I know. It's just I thought that scene was just hilarious to watch because it's just like, what are they even playing? This clearly isn't football. They get slammed on that ground. That's not going to be comfortable. That's just like a very thin mat covering a concrete floor.
Oh,
you're going to break something, dude.
At the school?
Yeah,
okay.
Where they're playing like the
it's future rugby, Kevin.
Yeah.
You're supposed to break bones.
So, Kevin, it's funny because I'll be honest, the first act I was probably the most invested in.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm right there with you.
Okay. I don't know.
Wow, we have polar opposites for this movie.
When you said you were so, I'm like, oh boy. But yeah, that was the only part. I think it was because I thought the story was going to go in a different way, and it didn't. Yeah, it was kind of high school, but I also whatever. It was the setup. But yeah, I was more surprised. For me, okay, I can get on board that this is like a futuristic world, and like the galaxy is treated kind of like a country in a sense, like I can get on board with all of that. I think it was just all of the mundane stuff that wasn't explained well. Like in the beginning, I'm like, are they in high school or are they in college? And then
they're in high school.
Yeah, and I figured that out later, but then, okay, they're checking to see their math final, and Rico got like a 35. And later he's saying he's thinking about joining the what was it called? The mobile infantry. And
he's thinking about
becoming a citizen.
Becoming a citizen, which requires at least 2 years of service within whatever field you qualify for. And since his math score was so low, he qualified for mobile infantry, which is basically just grunt work.
Okay, but the thing was, he was telling his parents he's thinking about this, and his dad's like, "What? No, you're going to Harvard." I'm like, really? You got that low of a score on like your math test? How are you getting?
Well, we saw
Harvard?
He was good at sports. He could have gotten into Harvard on a sports scholarship.
Okay. But also that was the other thing, was they're taking their finals, and they're basically like they graduated, and they then had a football type game. I'm like, that's usually in the fall. Why is also it's indoors? And then they went to a dance, and then they were just out of school.
Sam, are you trying to tell me that you know what the regular season for future rugby looks like?
I don't. I don't.
I mean, who's your favorite fantasy sports ball team? Come on.
Chase McBallenhole. I don't know.
Oh my god. That sounds like something out of Caddyshack. Oh my god.
Jesus. All right.
Okay. To get back on track. So
moving on.
What I was going to say about the reason I really like the first act of the movie is because of the way the book's written, I think, in that he spends so much time establishing this society. In the movies, we really feel like this society, like the world is built, right? It feels like a real world that exists. Yeah. You have all these interesting little tidbits that pop up in those, like propaganda. Would you like to know more? Like bits.
I absolutely love the propaganda pieces in this movie, and I'll let you continue. But I got some fun facts about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll get back to that in a second. So, so I liked that you have these people who are like maybe not psychic, and like that's a whole thing. And of course, they have the mobile infantry and the pilots, and you can clearly tell like this is like a strict fascist society just from the beginning. But
yeah,
like it's interesting because at the start of the movie, it's not readily apparent where this movie is going to go, and it's only after the whole asteroid incident happens where you go, oh, I can pretty much tell you how the whole rest of this movie is going to go.
Yeah,
which is why it got a little less interesting for me after that happened. I still enjoyed it because it's like spectacle at that point, and who doesn't like spectacle? But
exactly,
yeah, after that point I was sort of like, oh, we're done with like the interesting stuff of talking about the world and like how this society actually low-key really sucks and everybody dies, but our main characters lived, so join up today, everybody.
Yeah.
So they're living in Buenos Aires?
So Sam, I kind of wanted to ask you a question about this movie.
Okay.
Did you kind of pick up on like the kind of like the fascist kind of themes that this movie was kind of giving off? Did that kind of like resonate with you, or did you kind of like pick up on that at all?
I mean, it was a very obviously militarized world. Like, I got that much.
Okay.
Like, yeah, the propaganda stuff, I did think that was an interesting touch, but every time I would see it, it kind of made me think how you told me you saw a review where they said this is either a good movie trying to be dumb, or a smart movie trying to be dumb, or a dumb movie trying to be smart.
Yeah,
and I felt
that's a very apt description.
And I felt
like it is like the most brilliant description of this movie I can come up with, I've ever heard.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's so true, because the propaganda, I think it was that if this was a better, I just felt like it had it was trying to be clever and it didn't come off the way it was supposed to. I feel like it wasn't to the success that obviously it could have been. And so I don't think the whole fascist thing, I don't think I really thought that much of. It was definitely very clear that the world was a very militarized like place. So I got that much. But I think I was just so the war hadn't started yet. There's these bugs out there that.
Yeah, so the way that this movie kind of portrays itself is it is very much a pro-fascist organization, and kind of going back to the propaganda pieces, I actually found out that Paul Verhoeven directly mimicked a lot of the propaganda pieces from like propaganda used by the Nazis in World War II, like why we fight, and it's like same font and everything. It was just very much a way to rile the masses against fighting an enemy that they deemed as inhuman. And the way that they kind of mimicked this movie between like humans versus bugs, they pretty much like light this movie up in a very pro genocide way. Like they even make it like a competition between the races. Like when you see the State Marshal like announce his invasion plan. It's like he pretty much says something along the lines of human, not insect, will rule this galaxy now and forever. It's like not necessarily like, oh, we're going to avenge what happened in Buenos Aires. No, we're just going to wipe out all of the bugs and make sure that we are dominant in this galaxy.
Well, and you have
the classic line in this.
You have the bug scientist on TV who's talking about like, hey, maybe these bugs are smart, and you have that other guy who's like, hey, maybe these bugs like are reacting to something that we did and that we should probably look at. And basically, the main characters of the movie and everybody else in the movie basically says, no, bug bad, exterminate. Right?
Yeah.
Every time like the idea, like any kind of like idea of like peace or like bug intelligence is brought up, that like, hey, maybe there is a way for peace, the movie is immediately shot down. Like the movie shoots that idea down immediately with like passion, rage, raw emotion rather than logical thinking. It's like, oh, maybe there's like a hive mind, like some kind of like hive cast of bug that we've never seen. And it's like, frankly, I think the idea of a bug that thinks offensive, like that whole like Tucker Carlson like Fox News segment propaganda piece, which I thought was hilarious. And yeah, no, every time they even think about going about this in some kind of logical manner, it's just immediately like pulled back down with like some like raw emotions. Like, I say we kill them all. They wiped out Buenos Aires. The only good bug's a dead bug. It's just everyone focuses on the raw emotion of this, which I think was the intention of the Federation, because the fact that they had an invasion plan set up so fast after Buenos Aires makes me think that there's a popular fan theory that they allowed Buenos Aires to happen, or that Buenos Aires was an inside job, because they never fully explain how the bugs were able to launch asteroids across the galaxy with that pinpoint accuracy.
Yes.
On one hand,
yes.
they show the big asteroid, right, that almost kills Carmen on her ship, right? So we do see that happens, and it's implied that that's the asteroid that ends up destroying Buenos Aires. But on the other hand, a point I'd like to bring up is the asteroid that passes them is clearly not moving at light speed. And it shows the galaxy map of where the planet is and where Earth is. That course, that trajectory, even at light speed, would take millions of years for that asteroid to get there. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, and also the galaxy map, it's pretty much both planets, Earth and Clendau, the Arachnid homeworld, are on completely opposite sides of the galaxy. So, and like it's like a point A to point B, like there's a straight line across this galaxy. So that would mean that the asteroid, in order to hit it, it would have to maneuver around multiple planets and celestial bodies and all the gravitational like forces around those like objects in space. There is no way that meteor would be able to travel in a perfectly straight line from point A to point B without interfering with something in between.
I mean,
or crashing, or just not even making it there.
You could argue that like the intention of that is, oh, Buenos Aires is an inside job, or they were using this as an excuse to go to war. But I think the more logical assumption, I think that's honestly giving the movie too much credit. I think the more logical assumption is they wanted this disaster to happen, so they made it happen, and now we're at the right. Like I don't see this movie as being that smart.
Well, I do want to.
I agree.
I would like to counter that with another point, if I may.
Sure.
No.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay, all right, fine. All right,
not fine. Allowed. No fan fiction here, Kevin.
No. Do you remember the earlier propaganda pieces in the beginning of the movie where they first kind of like explain the arachnids? Like, every school kid knows that an arachnid is dangerous, and it shows that like a couple scientists like releasing a cow into a cage with an arachnid, and specifically they show this cow being devoured, but there's a huge censor bar over the cow because it's that's a very gruesome scene. They don't want to show specifically that like inhumane treatment of an animal, right? So that's kind of a weird thing to censor. But like immediately after that, they show a human colony that was completely wiped out by arachnids, and they show all the dead bodies there, and they don't censor anything. And that, I think, is more gruesome than the attack on the cow. But why didn't they censor all these human dead bodies? Because the Federation was trying to rile the masses into a preemptive fight with the arachnids. They're trying to raise the tension to a boiling point where everyone needs to kill the arachnids because they killed all these humans.
I mean, I think it's very important that for any fascist society that they establish an other that needs to be destroyed. That said, the arachnids work very well as a proverbial boogeyman. It doesn't necessarily imply that they were gearing up to go to war with them. Also, I do think it's funny that they don't show off like, or they always show off like graphic imagery on their television. They even in one of the like would you like to know more segments, they talk about the execution tonight at 6 on all channels.
Yeah. all channels live.
Yeah.
I think there's arguments there, Kevin, but I don't think that there's enough information deliberately put across in the movie to make that argument. If that's like what you wanted to believe, there's no information that disputes that. And if that improves the movie for you, then I think that that's fine. But I don't see this movie as one that deliberately or attempted to show that as being a thing.
I felt like,
but go ahead.
I was gonna say, I kind of agree. I think that's the idea of them letting Buenos Aires happen, or that it was an inside job. I think those are really interesting theories, but I just feel like based on this conversation and thinking about the movie, I felt like they were a lot of instances, or just they were trying really hard to make a point and show this like fascist world where they didn't develop the story or the characters enough. And for me, if all of those things were better, like collectively, then I would be like, that's a really interesting theory. Because I do think that's a really interesting theory, but part of me is just kind of like that, like they focus way more on the theories and the world itself as opposed to the characters that are trying to keep us engaged into this world.
Yeah. Well, and again, I almost feel like that's on purpose, because if it depends on how much credit you want to give to the movie. Because on one hand, you could say, yeah, the acting is wooden and it's not great in a lot of circumstances. Poor job on the actors. But on the other hand, you could say, hey, if this whole film is essentially supposed to be a propaganda film for the Federation, then it makes total sense that this character is a little wooden and a little lacking depth, because the whole point of this character is he's supposed to be a poster boy for the for the mobile Federation. Infantry. He's supposed to be a poster boy for the Federation, as is look, all our characters end up in really good places despite the horrors that they've gone through. And those horrors are never, the finger is never pointed at the Federation, except maybe once or twice in their initial attack on Klendathu. They point the finger at the Federation a little bit. But after that point, essentially everything is saying, no, it's the Bug's fault. We need to get revenge. We need to do this. We need to do that. So is it because the movie was shot badly or acted badly, or is that intentional? Right. So
oh my God.
I don't think it was super intentional, but
is this the best movie ever? What the hell? I don't understand. Is this a good movie? Oh my God!
Sam has now hit a breaking point.
Because
this is what I've been hoping for.
I just was like, it's like a war movie. It wasn't even like, I just didn't. I don't know. I wasn't that engaged in the story, and I didn't mind. Yeah. I didn't really hate any characters that I was like there were a couple times where someone got hurt and I was like, no, like I rooted for the characters. It wasn't a story that I particularly cared about. For me, that was really why I wasn't fully invested. But
I mean, not every movie is gonna grab you, right? Like, I definitely think that that's a failing in it, is that its characters aren't super interesting. So if you're in here for like, to watch insane character development or good writing, it's not really a great movie in that respect.
You should watch Space Jam.
Well, I pretty much like when I pretty much like recommended this movie knowing full well that you wouldn't be like super on board with this, Sam, because like
care.
No, like I knew like this isn't like the movie that, like you would typically watch on your own. Like this is like very much like not in your wheelhouse. It's a very graphic, gory, like action movie with fascist themes. Like, yes, this screams Sam. I better recommend it to her.
I am not upset that I don't think I wasted my time, and I'm not upset that I watched this movie or anything.
Yeah.
I think I'm more just frustrated because I thought it was either going to be significantly worse, that it was like funny bad, or it was going to be like, it's not a great movie, but it's like a fun movie. And I just felt like it was kind of, for me, I felt like it was kind of blah. It was just very bland. But
it is a long movie.
Yeah, my God, it's so long.
This movie is 2 hours and 9 minutes long.
Long.
Yeah, but by God, do they make use of that time?
I think that they more or less, because this is something that really interested me watching it and knowing that there's a book written about it. Because when you write a book, oftentimes you spread out, right? You tend to, books allow you to really take a character and develop them over multiple years of time. It's a lot easier to do that in a book than in a movie. In a movie, when you time skip a lot, it typically causes you to lose connection with your character. And that was something that I think I could level a criticism at this movie at, because it jumps time a lot, it never indicates to you how much time has passed. Like,
so let's actually kind of like focus a bit more on the characters since you brought that up.
Sure.
What was, because we've kind of been jumping around a lot with like the story and like the themes. Let's kind of pinpoint like some of the characters themselves. So who let's start with you, Sam. Who was kind of like your kind of like standout like character performance, or like what were some like the characters that you kind of like gravitated towards?
I mean, I liked Rico, but there was really no reason for me to not like Rico. I didn't really the thing is, again, they were kind of wooden. So Rico was a decent guy. Carmen was pretty decent. What was the other girl's name? The redhead girl?
Dizzy.
She kind of, in the beginning, she kind of fluctuated whether she was going to be a character protagonist, a character antagonist, or, what. Like, I will say this. I did want to bring this up, and there is a scene in this that I was thinking about for a while, because it gave me a lot to think about. There's a scene where Rico and his like infantry, whatever, they're all showering together, and I was just like,
I'm so glad someone brought this up.
And I'm like, first of all, very shocked, because you're not seeing like you're seeing boobs and butts, and I was just like, first of all, I was more surprised because in the military, haven't done research on it. I don't know the extent of it, but I do know that sexual assault and like violence, it was a huge issue in the military. I don't know how bad it is.
Huge issue in the military.
I assumed it still was. I don't know enough about it, but I do know it's an issue. And so this just was like, I was just really like, this is not safe. And this really bothered me. And then I was realizing they're just having a conversation. Like, why did they all join? The guys are not making any advances or comments towards the women. And then it started making me think, throughout this whole movie, there does seem to be a lot of, for the most part, unless it's like an asshole character, there's a lot of gender equality. Like, the women and the men are all treated exactly the same. And I was very like, because when I first saw that scene, my first thought was, are you shitting me? Is this just a scene so they have an excuse to show boobs? Like,
I mean, yes, but also they made a good use of it.
And then I was like,
fun fact, in order for like the actors to get comfortable with that, the director was also naked when filming that scene.
Oh my god. That's funny. I don't know how that helps anybody, but that's hilarious.
It's like, you know what? I'm not going to make you guys do anything I wouldn't do myself. So he's like just chilling in his director chair. It's like, action.
But like, I was first thinking this was just an excuse to show nudity. And then I was thinking, or is this a really good example of showing gender equality? And I realized how, there doesn't seem to be any issue of someone being a woman at all in this world. And I thought that was really great. But I realized part of me thinks that scene was still, I don't know, based on our conversation so far, at first I thought it was just an excuse to show it, and it could be looked at as this works, or it works, or this was done well and like it works and it was specifically meant to be this way, but it's still coming off like, see, I mean, it's either a smart movie trying to be dumb or a dumb movie trying to be smart. Like,
I think that movie, that specific scene works for two ways. Is one, it, as you were saying, Sam, it does kind of like show off like gender equality, and this movie also like shows multiple times like race equality. Like there's a Ratchek's like second lieutenant, like his like lieutenant is a black woman, and she like doesn't take shit from anyone. Everyone follows her orders. She punches Jake Busey, and it's like, oh, sorry, ma'am. Like he apologizes to her.
Well, I think there's an interesting point to be made with that, because, and this is actually when you started talking about the shower scene, it made me want to get into this. In the shower scene, right, they all talk about why they joined the military and how some of them joined because they were bored of farming, and a lot of them, right, joined because they had to in order to do something else with their life, right? Yeah. I'm going into politics, so I have to be a part of the military. I want to have kids, which in this society, you're more likely to be able to get a permit, I guess, or whatever she was saying, to have kids if you're in the military.
Basically the way that this the government is set up is it's divided amongst citizens who are people who have actively participated at least 2 years in federal service, which is what they are doing, and civilians who basically have like no they have no like voting rights. They don't really have like any political rights or government rights directly at face value without doing some kind of like direct service to the Federation. And the way that this is kind of set up is it's a division of classes, and I think that's supposed to be like the kind of like their kind of like example of like gender or like racial inequality, is because they don't really have that in this world because there's already like a divide amongst the classes of people. And apparently they kind of explained this a little bit in this movie, but they kind of touch on it a bit more in the sequels and in the book, is that if you're a citizen, you're more likely to be picked up for a job over a civilian. You're allowed to get permits a lot more easily, and in this world, you need to have a permit in order to have a license to vote, carry a firearm, or to have children, which is kind of a weird thing that the government regulates childbirth.
I mean, makes eyebrows at China.
Yeah, I was literally thinking, China. But, I mean, I will say,
I wasn't gonna go there, but all right.
Well, actually, I don't worry, I won't talk about China anymore. But I wanted to talk about that. There's an interesting comparison to be made there with the fact that all of them have to join the military in order to do what they want to do, and the fact that in the United States, oftentimes it's a similar thing where you have a lack of opportunity that can be mitigated if you sign up for the military, right? If you can't afford to go to college, like one of the characters in that film, if you sign up for the military, it makes it a lot easier, right? So, and what also kind of drew me to that conclusion is the Klendathu scene, which I'll go ahead and break that down a bit. So after Earth gets hit with the big asteroid that the insectoids launched, that may or may not have been an inside job. Asteroids can't melt steel beams.
But bug plasma can.
So the humans basically decide to go on some big shock and awe campaign to fly straight to the bugs' homeworld and wipe them out, and hoorah, let's go.
And have it filmed live so everyone can view the glorious might of the Federation.
Right. And then they show up to Klendathu woefully unprepared and get their asses kicked and have to pull out and try again. And what that really reminded me of was essentially the entire experience that the United States had in the Vietnam War. How we sort of went in as, big guns, big powerful country, and then got our asses kicked by a technologically inferior foe because we didn't treat them as a competent threat. And given that sci-fi is often used to draw comparisons between real life situations, this one really does draw those sorts of lines for me, that it could be a commentary on the United States militarism. Another point that I could make about the racial undertones that you were talking about earlier is, while you're right that there are a lot, and it surprised me in a good way that there were a lot of other ethnicities aside from just a whole bunch of burly white dudes in this movie, and a lot of women in the movie as well, which is great. If you look at our main characters, right, they're all white, which is funny because Rico was Filipino in the books, but he's white in the movie. And
which is really weird.
Yes, and if you look at Flight Command or Neil Patrick Harris's division, who are definitely wearing Nazi outfits.
Oh my God,
they are straight up wearing SS uniforms.
They're straight up wearing SS uniforms. Like, there's no bandying about that one.
I was like just watching. My dad comes in, he's like, they look cute. They're dressed like Nazis. And I burst out laughing. I'm like, holy shit, they do. And it kept cutting. He's like, see? And I'm like, oh my God, yes. What the hell?
Yeah.
What the hell?
They Paul Verhoeven, if you look at the dress military uniforms for the mobile infantry, the pilot's uniform that Carmen wears when she's like kind of a trainee, and of course Carl's just games in theory like colonel like SS uniform, those are all based off of like the respective branches of the military from the Third Reich.
Right, absolutely. And of course it's trying to ape that. It even has the eagle imagery in the Federation's symbols and stuff like that. But what I also wanted to say was, if you look at the people who are like flying the ships in pilot school and the people who are like in politics or in Neil Patrick Harris's division, they're all white. The only real place where we see a widespread diversity of skin tone is in the mobile infantry, which also implies some things about the stratification of their society that most of them aren't able to get into those higher areas.
I would like to make a counterpoint. After the failed invasion of Klendathu, the Sky Marshal steps down and his replacement is a woman of color.
Yes, I was actually about to get to that, because that's the one other place where we see that happen is yes, when he does step down, the new Sky Marshal is which might mean that that wasn't a point they intended to make, and we just see more characters from the mobile infantry, which would be fair. So they might not have been intentionally trying to make a point about that, but I just thought it would be interesting to bring up.
Yeah, and kind of off topic, but in a lot of the sequels, we do see a bit more of like the command personnel, and it is a lot more
diverse.
It's a lot more diverse. Not necessarily. Actually, no, it is very much like diversity of both race and gender. Like, in one of the animated movies, it is, I believe, a Japanese woman. It's hard to tell racial features in a animated sense because it's a weird kind of like CG kind of animation.
Oh boy, yeah. When was it made?
Yeah, so like a few years ago.
Okay.
It's surprisingly recent. And that one was actually really good, and it had a lot of the voice cast of returning cast members from this movie. Like Casper Van Dien reprises his role as Johnny Rico in that, and a few other people as well. Yeah, like 20 years after this movie, it's like, yeah, I'm Johnny Rico still.
Can we talk about how raw some of the lines are in this movie?
I would absolutely love to.
Like, okay, look, I'm not going to say the writing's good, because I don't think the writing overall is good. It has its good moments. I liked the...
the actual... You mean like the dialogue, or like the actual way like the story was written?
Kind of both. Like, I like the scene where Rico wakes up in the not Bacta tank, and his friends run in and they hold up the KIA thing, and they're like, hey, you're dead. Like, they screwed up and listed you as dead when you weren't. Like, that's funny, and that works, and that's good writing. But like,
Yeah.
The fact that Carmen thinks he's dead and then realizes later he's not dead has no impact on anything else in the story.
Yes!
It's completely wasted writing, and I'm not sure why they did it.
I literally, oh my god, sorry, I just want to talk about that scene, because they pick him up.
Yeah, go for it.
And Xander is like, oh, by the way, your friend Rico's back there. And she's like, what? And you think she's gonna, I thought she was gonna, I don't know, put it on autopilot, or have Xander take the wheel and go and be like, oh my god, I thought you were dead. And she just turns around and he walks in, she's like, I thought you were dead. He's like, no, a lot of my friends are. And then we just move right along. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and then we stop caring.
Guy, I will say this: if I thought either of you guys were dead, and then you weren't, I'd have a bunch of questions and be like, "Oh my god, wow, great! I'm glad you're not dead." I would be a lot. I was just like, "That's it," and I even thought is her friend gonna say, "Oh, by the way, I think you should know your friend's alive?" And I thought, and then he did, and I was like, "Oh, okay, okay, cool. Just knock down that wall."
Yeah, I mean, Xander may be the douche to end all douches, but he at least isn't.
He's not. He was just.
Honestly, I don't think he's a bad guy. I think for 90% of the movie, he's fine.
He's supposed to be the douche, and especially in the beginning because he's flirting with Carmen, but Carmen's also obviously flirting with him. She's like, "Oh, you're a pilot. I'm gonna I don't know." They're just. She's not.
I
she's being
low-key
nice
think
to him.
Carmen and Rico are both bad people. I don't think either of them are very good people.
Okay, I can kind of understand Carmen, because she literally has a scene transition and a wardrobe change in her breakup email.
Yes!
So she put a lot of planning into that. But how is Rico the bad guy? In your opinion?
He's not a bad guy, but he gets very possessive and worked up, and puts her in that first that conversation that they have when she's leaving to go to pilot school, and he puts her in a position where she either has to lie to him or break his heart, when he's like, what can you say you love me too once before you leave, is basically what he asked her to do. I'm like, why would you ask somebody that? He ignores Dizzy for 90% of the movie, even though she's obviously a better person for him. She's a better person than he deserves. I'll say that much.
She straight up just gives me the fuck me eyes every time she looks at him in this movie.
Oh my god, the whole movie. And I don't know, she for me was kind of, in the beginning, I thought was kind of the same as Xander. It was just another character that I thought was going to affect our protagonist, and then nope, it never really comes to anything. They just become friends. And okay, later the scene when they do have sex, I was like, okay,
yeah.
So they just,
that scene's funny.
Okay,
I
whole scene.
love the ending of that scene.
But Michael Ironside's reaction to that, it's like, who's in there with you? It's like, oh, it's Forrester. It's like, make it 20 minutes.
What?
It's like best commanding officer ever.
Before that scene though, so he got them beer. It was a party. He got him beer, and he said, "And here's entertainment." And the entertainment were a couple of Nerf footballs, a few soccer balls, and a violin. Which Jake Busey...
no, not just a violin, a plastic neon violin. Jake Busey immediately busts out a. This is kind of a weird thing that I kind of need to break down. He's playing a song played by Southern troops during the Civil War, while a black man is dancing with a white woman. I don't know how to break that down.
Wow, yeah, I'm not touching that one. I'm just gonna let that.
I didn't even notice that.
Do its own thing.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, he's playing I forget the name of the song, but it's like Daisy Duke or something, not Daisy Duke, but it has some weird Southern name, but the implications of that song, it was a song played specifically by Southern troops during the American Civil War.
It's is that a commentary on how far we come? Is it irony? Is it meant to be taken at face value?
Is it just,
I have no idea.
This is good dancing music. But yeah.
It's I have no fucking idea.
But at this point, yeah, even if there was more of a love triangle between Johnny, Dizzy, and Carmen, I would have been fine. It just seemed like he clearly is more into Carmen, and that Carmen breaks up with him, and then he's just whatever about it. He's upset, but then he kind of is just, okay, whatever, we broke up. And then Dizzy's with him the whole time, but she also is just she more seems in the beginning why didn't we ever get together? I'm supposed to feel bad for her, but I don't, because I don't know her.
That's fair.
And that's my thing about. I will say this didn't do it. I have seen love triangles where they go so over the top because they want me to feel bad about this person. They want me to feel bad for this person, but this person's so irritating and difficult that why would I care? And she was. I didn't mind her as a character. I think I did in the beginning like him and Carmen, so I was kind of like back off.
Okay.
But when they do, as they are getting closer, especially because Carmen and him broke up, that first of all they're dancing, and then Jake Busey comes up really close to them and is like still playing the violin.
Yeah, it's like
okay, so that might look like really creepy, but like here's my thing. Here's how I viewed that. Is like he's been watching her make Mooney eyes at Rico for probably years at this point. And finally they're dancing, and because Rico's too freaking stupid and in his own head to look at the woman in front of him. So this dude sees him dancing and he's like, oh my god, fucking finally. So that's
it's
how
I'm
gonna
wingman the shit out of this. Yeah, no, he's just like, I'm gonna be the ultimate wingman. It's like, I'm gonna serenade both of these two.
Can we actually, sorry, we gotta talk about the time jumps, because I didn't even realize there were time jumps. I thought
there was really only like one time jump. It begins in the middle of like the failed invasion of Clondathu, and then jumps back a year, and then it just kind of like goes through the training up until Clondathu, and then from the present onward.
Yeah,
it goes through the training up until Clondathu, but obviously, like there's a period of time when he rejoins and does more stuff. And obviously we're moving through time while he's training, but we're not told exactly how much time has passed, and there's no indication of that.
The only time that's like really passed between like the invasion in Clondathu and the rest of the movie is him being in that stasis pod, and like both Dizzy and Ace show up. It's like, hey, you're gonna be in here for 3 more days. Like that's really like the only like significant time jump. And
I don't think that's true.
Aside from like the time jump in the like the year long, like him being in the military, it's just like that whole period is just supposed to be
because you have them get reassigned essentially because their whole unit was destroyed. But obviously the his teacher, right, who pulled him out of the fire, it's implied, has been on more missions since then, and obviously the bugs have been more active too, because that place he was going to go on vacation isn't there anymore.
Zegama Beach.
Yeah, right.
I gotta say, I do love that part. You're not. I'm joining the mobile infantry. No, you're going on vacation. In the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh my god, a dumb line.
So I'd actually like to kind of go back to the characters and talk about one of my favorites, because you just kind of brought him up, Aaron. Michael fucking Ironside killed it in this movie as Rashak and the Rashak Roughnecks. I loved his character from beginning as him just being like the high school teacher to being like this badass, competent military leader. And he, even when he says like probably like the dumbest line in this movie of they sucked his brains out, he says it with such conviction and so like menacing. It's like,
it still doesn't work,
you just made
but
that cool.
He does the best he could with it.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
He makes the dumbest line in the movie sound cool.
He was one of the best characters. I will agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was
him and Clancy Brown.
The first time I watched this, it totally threw me off because he just like shows up and is a soldier now, and I was like, what? But the second time I watched it, I was like, okay, I can kind of see where they were coming from here, and you're right that his performance, like as the lieutenant, is great, and he basically does that character the justice that character deserves, right? And he gets a lot of really good lines too. So
just like, all right, I have one rule for you new people: everybody fights, no one quits. You don't do your job, I'll shoot you myself.
Or
jeez.
See, there is
come on, you apes, you want to live forever?
No, the part where he's like, you're sergeant until you die or I find somebody better. Like,
yeah,
that's very Vietnam, by the way.
He has like some of like the best lines in this movie, and it just gets to a point where like Rico just starts using his lines like they're his own. It's like, dude, you fucking stole that.
Well, nobody's left in the unit to call him on it. So.
I know. I also want to point out, like, in like the short time that Rico, Dizzy, and Ace are like a part of the Roughnecks, Rico on one mission goes through 3 military battlefield promotions because his superiors ahead of him keep dying. He becomes first lieutenant, then he becomes second in command, and then he becomes leader of the Roughnecks because he has to do a mercy killing on Michael Ironside.
Well, he became the acting leader. It's not until Neil Patrick Harris gives him the position that he actually got the position. Yeah. Otherwise, he probably would have gone back to being second in command. They would have brought in more command staff.
So Clancy Brown is below him by the end?
Clancy Brown is, basically the way that's set up is that he's like their like drill sergeant in training, and also him training was just fantastic.
It's pretty Brown's
good. Like,
it's pretty good.
Put your hand on that wall. It's like, sir, I don't understand. Why do we have to use throwing knives when all we have to do is push a button and nuke them? It's like, put your hand on that wall. Throws the knife, sticks Jake Busey's hand into the wall. It's like, the enemy cannot push a button if you disable his hand. Like,
so good.
That's a solid fucking reason.
Well, that's just Army Machismo at its finest.
Yeah. Also, I kind of want to point out a fact in their training is that throughout their entire training, they're training how to like hand-to-hand combat against human opponents. They're throwing knives, and they even say it's like, oh, if you disable your opponent's hand, they can't push a button. And the targets that they're shooting at when Rico's in command and one of his soldiers like dies on his watch, the targets that they're shooting at are human targets. So that kind of brings into the question of, why aren't they training these soldiers how to fight bugs?
Well, the war hadn't started yet at that point.
I know, but the Federation had kind of been gearing up to that point of like a inevitable like confrontation between them. So the fact that they're fighting or going over like tactics to fight and disable or kill like human combatants seems kind of counterproductive for a war that is inevitably going to happen between the arachnids and the humans.
Yeah,
you would think that they would have at least had like arachnid dummies on the shooting range.
Yeah, exactly.
At the very least, like every army will go through hand-to-hand combat drills and practice with fighting human opponents because that's important stuff to know. But you would think if they were doing like actual target practice, maybe if they had practiced on arachnid opponents, they wouldn't have sucked so much at actually hitting the CGI. Which, did you notice like a lot of the soldiers in cases will be pointing their guns just like up in the air, just like nowhere near where it's like they weren't clear on what size the bug was going to be.
Yeah, that happened a few times, but thankfully it kind of
they're usually in the back.
It kind of gets masked out a little bit because there's usually just a huge swarm of bugs. Like, oh, they're not shooting at the bug directly in front of them. They're shooting at the bug like 40 feet away. It's like, that makes sense. They're at least shooting at something.
He's arcing the bullets, guys.
And also I kind of want to point out a random their like biology teacher when they're like dissecting like the bug when they're in high school. I didn't realize it, but their biology teacher is Rue McCallaghan, who is a member of the Golden Girls. I did not know that for the longest time.
When I saw that, I'm like, she looks really familiar. Who is this? And then I looked her up and I'm like, oh my god! So it's Blanche. She's like the slut of the group.
Yeah.
And I was like,
thank you for being my friend.
She's in the Golden Girls, really?
She's Blanche. She's the slut.
Good lord. I didn't realize that at all.
I don't even know that show.
But she's only in that one scene and she never comes back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're
it was just really funny.
I think we're getting to the end here.
Yeah. So kind of going back to the story of the progression throughout the bug war of them trying to track down what the military doesn't even realize that there's a brain bug, of them trying to track that down and do that. Their military campaign going from disaster to a random small victory of them capturing a brain bug. How did you guys kind of like did you find that entertaining? Did you find that kind of cheesy at face value of like the brain bug sucking the brains out of people? Like, what was your kind of like take on that?
I mean, it was. I didn't have any.
That's the best reaction so far.
There wasn't any. I'm like, oh, that kind of sucks, and pun unintended. But like the scene at the end where Xander's getting his like brain sucked out, like I will say I did like that scene where he's like one of these days, like someone like me is gonna kill your whole damn species. Like I did think that whole was like, okay, what a line to go out on.
I mean that whole ending bit is just it just feels very predictable. It's not super well written, I think, for most of it. Like you have basically everything that you'd expect. Somehow, through very contrived circumstances, Carmen ends up on the planet, and through even more contrived circumstances, Rico somehow is able to determine where she is. They try and be like, Neil Patrick Harris was able to use his mental magic to tell Rico where she was. But I'm like, how did Neil know where she was?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so hold on. I kind of want to point that out of like the whole like the fact that psychics are a thing in this universe, because we kind of glossed over that. So the fact that psychics exist and they are pretty much like promoted immediately to high levels in the government. Like Neil Patrick Harris like doesn't really have like any military experience. He's kind of like run of the mill in terms of like intelligence. When we see his like math score, it's like 60 something or something like that. And he's immediately promoted to like games in theory in military intelligence, and when we see him, he's a colonel in the military. So the fact that the military like idolizes and immediately like promotes psychics, and he even says like, oh, I can't control humans yet because he's able to control his pet ferret, makes me think that, so does the military like just employ psychics into like federal service to control the masses?
Holy shit!
Just like, oh, shit!
And he implies that he was able to control Rico at the end, or at least message Rico with his mind, and says it's classified. Yeah. So there's that too.
Yeah, because so the fact that like he's able to like, and I'm assuming he's like close enough with like Carmen and Rico that he's able to like mentally like know where they are, because he's that strong of psychic now, because he's able to control.
That feels really contrived though.
But it is explained. That is fully explained in the sequel. And okay, I'm going into sequels, but
no, you don't. Okay, no.
Happen.
So if it came out before the movie, then you could use it as an example. But you can't use it as justification in a sequel for something that happened in the existing movie.
But the fact that it exists within the same universe and in the same timeline, I feel like does make it somewhat justified. It does make it a little bit forced because it happened after this, but the fact that it does happen, I still like feel is a viable example.
Right, like if they justify it later, that's fine, that's understandable. But at the end of the day, when you're watching the movie, you're still going, okay, that doesn't make sense, and it ruins your enjoyment, right? And you're watching them in the order that they're supposed to be watched in.
Yeah, okay, I see your point.
So, like,
I concede.
I like, I like that at the end you have the like drill sergeant who busts himself down to private to get into combat. Like, that was funny, and I like that at the end of the day our three main characters are like, yeah, we're still friends, and we're just not going to talk about everybody who died along the way. Like, it ends on a very upbeat note for a movie where most of its characters die, and I feel like it ultimately sells the whole, fascist propaganda movie premise that it was trying to do.
Because our three like poster children from each branch of the military had a crazy wild adventure, and they all have three wildly successful careers.
This movie was just
so
Carmen eventually becomes like commander of the Roger Young, her own ship. Johnny eventually becomes like a general in the mobile infantry, and Carl is basically like head of military intelligence.
Yeah, everything's great for everybody.
It's like join now, and this could be you. Would you like to know more?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think the movie is trying to be smart, and I think sometimes it succeeds. But I don't know, like, what are your, Kevin, if you had to give like final thoughts on this movie as a whole, what would you say?
I would definitely say give this movie a watch. It's a lot more than what you can take at face value, because at face value it is a very tongue-in-cheek sci-fi action movie with plenty of action, violence, and a fair amount of like a love triangle drama that you would see something from like 90210 or something like that. It keeps you invested in the characters long enough to root for them to get together and root against the arachnids, because they are preventing any of these characters from potentially like becoming like a permanent item, like Rico and Dizzy. You're rooting for them to stay together and against the arachnids, because the arachnids are trying to kill them and prevent them from being together. So I feel like that is a fair point for this movie. I very much recommend this, especially over the 2 live action sequels, which I do want to get into eventually, because as much as you guys don't really like this movie, this is probably the best
What did
one.
you said this to me once, and it makes me really want. I do want to keep watching it because of what you told me about the third movie, about how bad this movie, how bad that movie was.
Oh, well, hold on. Before we get sidetracked, can we? Sam, do you want to give your final thoughts on this one?
I mean, if you want to watch it, fine. I agree. There is a lot more layers than I really thought of, because all I was really focusing on was the very weak story.
You were taking this movie for face value.
And I do agree. I do like the idea of it not being as black and white as the movie is trying to be. Like, I do like that idea of maybe because I was thinking, like, how are the bugs, why and how are the bugs trying to attack the human race? Is there something that we're unaware of on their end that we should know? Like, I think on that, if you go deeper, I do think there is a lot more to this movie. And it's kind of either it's well done that it doesn't go that direction, or it's stupid that it doesn't go that direction. I've never quite... There's been a couple of movies that I haven't seen that I kind of now want to, because I remember people have said to me, like, or I've seen reviews where they're like, this is either a really good movie or a really bad movie. Like, you can't really decide. This is one of those movies. Like, there are a lot of things about it that are really smart and really like, wow, you really thought this through. And then there's a lot of things about it where I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, this movie, when I was kind of like researching like a lot of like general information on this movie, a lot of critics, like film critics and like historians and like movie historians, are like very on the fence on whether or not this is a good movie or a smart movie or a bad movie, or just everyone has a different take on this movie. Like, there is no unifying, like, solidified opinion on whether or not this is a good movie or a smart movie or a dumb movie. It's just kind of is what it is, because this movie is pro-fascist, but it does show all the flaws within a fascist society.
Yes. And I really think that your frame of mind going into this movie has a lot to do with what you take away from it. I don't think it's for everyone. I think that a lot of people are going to come in and see a dumb action movie that is way longer than it needs to be, and that that's an understandable takeaway to have from this movie, because
absolutely.
But if you come in looking at it as a satire, as here's all the ways we can poke fun at either our own society or at a different one, and that's kind of what sci-fi is for, right? It also, of course, draws influence from Star Wars, so I could see people viewing it as like a like Star Wars-y knockoff type deal. Like, I think that's a fair criticism to level at it. There's a couple scenes where they're flying ships around, like especially the first scene where she flies the little ship around the larger ship, where it's like, this is only in the movie because Star Wars exists. Like, so there's stuff like that too. But I liked it. I don't know how many more times I would watch it. It's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, let's watch Starship Troopers. But it's fun in its own way. And it's interesting. Again,
movie that I literally like I literally like put this on. It's like, oh, we're gonna do a podcast on it, and as soon as I put it on, my dad came in and was like, oh, we're watching Starship Troopers. Sweet.
Yeah,
it's got a world that is well developed, and I think that's why it has a following, if nothing else. Because whenever you have a world that's developed enough, you get people who can imagine more scenarios in your world, and once people start doing that, that's when you get a following. So it doesn't surprise me that it gets a following and that people really like it. But I think that at the end of the day, the amount of substance in this movie is really dependent on how much you're looking for in this movie.
Yeah. It's pretty much, there's something there if you look hard enough. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy watching this movie, is because it seems like every time I watch it, I notice a scene or a character or something that has some kind of interpretation that I never realized. Like the whole like Jake Busey playing like a Southern song while they're all celebrating. Like I didn't know that until I kind of looked more into it. Of like, oh, why is he playing like this kind of like Yankee Doodle kind of song? It's like, oh, that's a Southern song. That's kind of an odd choice to play, but you do you, Jake. So yeah, that's pretty much my take on this movie. And kind of going back to the sequels that fuck. I told this story to Sam before. I don't know if I ever told you this, Aaron.
Okay.
But, I had some friends in high school who very much enjoyed the first Starship Troopers movie. Not as much as I enjoyed it, but it's like, yeah, this is a fun movie. And the sequels, like at this point, they only had the 2 live action sequels. The second one is beyond forgettable. It's not even really worth mentioning time. It has almost nothing to do with the first movie at all. Has none of the original cast. It just is just following a random platoon at some point during the Bug War.
Okay.
Doesn't matter when.
So it's
it
like
really
an
has
episode
no
of Clone
point.
Wars, basically.
Basically, it has no impact on like.
No, like nothing wrong with that, but that can be kind of forgettable.
The second movie is literally just a filler episode. Yeah. It has no impact whatsoever.
Okay, what about the third? You sound like you want to make a point here.
The third movie. My friends in high school hated the third movie so much that whenever they saw a copy, like a DVD copy in a store, they would buy it and then immediately take it to their home and then destroy it Office Space style.
Oh my god!
They would just beat the living shit out of it.
Okay, then I guess we'll have to see what this is all about. I mean, you know me, Kevin. I'll watch anything once.
Oh god.
So yeah, the third. Oh my god, I've seen the third movie a few times.
Good lord, Kevin, why do you continually punish yourself?
It's not. The funny thing is that I had never seen it before. They told me, it's like, oh yeah, the movie's shit. We literally just destroy every copy we come across. Like they hated this movie so much that they would spend their own money just to buy multiple copies and just like fucking burn them in a barbecue in their backyard. But I remember watching the third movie, and the third movie, I don't think is that bad.
Oh, good lord. Okay, well, if you want another, I've been relatively mellow this episode, so if you want another episode of me screaming at my microphone for 30 minutes, we should probably watch
There's just one thing I want to say about the third movie, is that the third movie, it does have a lot of the returning cast members. So Casper Van Dien comes back, and like a few other characters. I think it's different actors, but different characters, or same characters but different actors.
Okay.
Which that's kind of lame. But they do kind of bring in one element in this into that movie that I kind of wish that they kind of put into this movie, and that is the inclusion of religious indoctrination.
Okay. So don't tell me anymore. I want to go into this one blind. And see how it goes.
The fact that your friends would buy copies and destroy it just makes me want to watch it even more.
Yeah. I kind of want to go over the second one as well, because I do eventually kind of want to go over these in order, but like the second one is just okay. The second one had like a third of the budget of this one.
Oh Lord.
And it shows.
Yeah.
And it's literally I swear to God, it's literally a haunted house story.
Kevin, let me just ask you this: for either of these two movies, did they get ILM back?
I have no idea. I don't think so.
Because if the answer is no, I'm gonna get real concerned.
I don't. Okay, it's been a long time since I've seen either of the live action sequels. But the main premise of the second one is a platoon of soldiers ends up in an abandoned facility surrounded by arachnids that basically they have it fenced off so like the arachnids can't get in.
That's a Clone Wars
What kind of fence did they use?
It's basically like a bug zapper fence, but apparently they forgot in the first movie that the bugs can burrow underground. So I guess they forgot about that because that never is a problem in this movie, or that they have flying bugs. It's literally they have like a 10-foot like electrical fence that is a bug zapper. Whenever an arachnid gets too close, it just zaps them to death.
Okay.
And it's literally just a haunted house movie of like all these soldiers in like this abandoned facility trying to call for help because the radio is broken, and there's some like weird invasion of the body snatcher shit going on.
This movie.
Huh. Well,
and then the third one, which I'm not telling you any more about that one.
In conclusion, on the first movie, we're kind of getting sidetracked here. So, in conclusion, on the first movie, I think the biggest impression I got from it was just Star Trek is what I'd like mankind's future to be like, but the Federation from this movie is what's far more likely to happen.
You know what? Okay.
Fair point.
On that note, everybody get out and vote. Register to vote.
Would you like to know more?
Would you like to know? Oh boy.
Damn.
Oh boy.
All right. So remember to like, share, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, listen to our podcast. If you would like to listen to any more of our insane ramblings about Starship Troopers, listen more. We got there's 4 more Starship Troopers movies, so maybe we'll get to them. Who knows?
You enjoyed Aaron. Well, if this is the episode where you decided to join and you really loved Aaron, then maybe listen to Space Jam, because
that's the other one I was on.
I was like, I was crying.
You flipped your shit so hard in that episode.
I will not apologize. That movie deserved every word that I spoke regarding it.
It was so fun. I was editing that episode, and I was
truth.
crying, laughing while editing at the outrage and the pain that you were in over Space Jam.
Yeah. I cannot wait to hear that level of. No, I cannot wait to hear that level of emotion and passion about the Starship Trooper sequels, because boy oh boy, you are in for a ride.
Can't wait.
Stop it! You got me at my friends would buy copies and just to destroy it. So like
yes,
I know for normal people,
fuck, I feel like
that's a clue to not watch a movie, but.
Yeah. No, these guys were like not like film majors or anything. These were just like average guys that just like enjoyed action movies. Like their favorite movie was Expendables 3.
There's only
there are worse favorites. So
there's 4.
I know.
I think maybe 4 movies in this world that pained me in such a way that I would consider destroying Office Space Style. At least 2 of them I would definitely destroy Office Space Style, and 2 of them I'm still in debate.
We'll have to watch them again, Sam, and hear your thoughts.
I think, Kevin, you can guess at least one of those movies that pained me.
I have 2, and I know for a fact you guys know one of them.
Yeah, we should watch that one, Kevin.
I do want to watch that movie.
If we ever watch that for this podcast, we are going to have to put an age restriction on that episode. I'm not joking.
Well, I mean,
I'm not going to hold back on that episode.
Explicit. And that means they're swearing.
I know. I'm just okay. Yeah. No. I'm giving you fair warning. If we do that fucking episode for that movie.
All right, guys. So thanks for watching.
I'm not holding back.
We're happy to have you. And next episode is going to be Satan's Little Helper.
I hate you. No.